everyone. I'm Sedef, work mom, back for another Get Me Hired episode. And I have my glasses on today because my eyesight is deteriorating because I'm old, and that's what happens. Woohoo! Something to look forward to for everyone. So, I did not join today to talk about my gripe about old age, but I would be happy to do that at any time if you'd like to just chat to me privately. Today I thought that we could talk about interview essentials, and I thought I would give you sort of 5 steps to remember, to prepare, so you can show up as your very best in an interview type of setting. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few homework basics, work mom basics, I don't know. But the live chat's open if you're here live and you want to ask questions, either about interviews or about anything to do with getting a job. Feel free to pop them into the live chat. I've got a little bit of a lag, but I'll pick them up as soon as I see them. And otherwise, I am going to go ahead and get started with step number 1 of interview essentials. Essentially, what I want you to do is take the job description, and if the interviewer gave you a list of people that you're going to be meeting in that interview, or if you're just preparing for a phone interview and you know who you're going to be talking to, in any case, I want you to sort of take those as your baseline and think through your credentials in relation to the job, in relation to the company, and in relation to the person or people that you're going to be talking to. So I want you to write down every single bit of experience, actual real life examples where your work experience is relevant to the job that you're going to do. Some project experience that you've done is relevant to the job that you're going to do. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's academic, maybe it's just exposure to an industry that is related to the work that you're going to have to do. Whatever it is, as long as it's relevant to the person you're going to meet, to the company that you're going to be talking to, or to the job, I want you to write down as many real-life examples as you can. Now, the reason I'm asking you to do this is a lot of the times you'll find yourself in an interview where somebody asks you to give them an example of when you have done something. And oftentimes candidates go to sort of, well, generally I like to approach situations like that. But it's much more impactful if you have an actual example. And oftentimes interviewers will sort of dig to try and get a specific example from you. This is called behavioral interviewing. The underlying factor to it is if you have proven that you are capable of doing something, even if it's in a different scenario, different environment, previously, then the chances are that you'll be able to replicate doing that in a new environment are much higher. If you failed and learned from it, that's okay, as long as you've had exposure to it and had some experience with it. So when interviewers ask you that question, we're asking you that not because we want to know what your opinions are. We're asking you that because we're trying to figure out if we can mitigate the risk of hiring you by understanding how much real related experience that you've had. So write it all down. Think through it. It's not something that I necessarily want you to have with you at your resume, at the actual interview, but you can keep it within your notes there if it'll make you feel more comfortable. But the actual act of thinking through them and writing them down will be enough to sort of solidify them in your memory. And then if you can read through them a few times as you're preparing for the interview, all the better for you at that stage as well. So all I want you to do is just build your confidence, establish your credentials, and then step number 2 involves taking some of those credentials and starting to build your case. What you want to do here is be able to answer these types of questions. Why did you apply for this job? Now, the answer should never be, even if it really is, I hate my job, I hate my boss, I hate everything about whatever it is the environment is I'm coming from, and I just want to get the hell out of there. That might be true, but you have to position that in a way that poses a more positive spin. So, for example, I'm just going to give you sort of off the cuff here. Let's say I absolutely hate my boss and need to leave this company that I'm working at, and there's this other opportunity that looks like fairly parallel. And so if someone were to ask me why I was looking to make a parallel switch as opposed to an advancement in that scenario, rather than say I'm trying to run away from a horrible boss, I would say, I've had the opportunity to work in this team and environment and really understand what this business sector takes, but I've noticed that you guys use slightly different approaches from the external, and I'm always one for learning, and so in order to develop myself, I'd love to get a little bit more exposure, and while I'd love an advancement opportunity, I'm looking for the right way to get my foot in the door to get a bit more learning, even if it means a parallel move. Didn't say anything about my boss. Didn't have to, because now I've demonstrated a passion for learning. I want to know more about this company. Oh, I just flattered them because I told them they were doing something unique. And you have to be able to back up what you say. Do your homework. What are they doing that's different than your company's doing or that your job is doing? And be able to talk to that. So what you want to do is be able to have the answers to these questions. Almost every interview that you go into will ask these questions or some variant of them, either directly or as part of the conversation. A lot of the times a really good interviewer won't let you feel like you're actually being interviewed. It'll feel more like a conversation with some work-specific questions thrown in just because, it's an interview. But in reality, what they're trying to do is pepper the conversations with these types of questions. And, the simplest one, why did you apply for this job, can trip people up sometimes. And it's one of the most important questions. It's not an icebreaker. We ask that question because we're trying to understand what motivates you and what you're going to bring to the table that's unique, different, how this challenges you, what drives you. What sort of homework have you done about this company? Have you really sort of come here with an excitement to work here, or are you just here for an interview? So start to build your case. Make sure that you have easy answers to these questions that can really sort of highlight how strong you are for that position. Step number 3 sort of brings step numbers 1 and 2 together. But a lot of the times an interview will start with something as simple as, tell me about your background and what brought you here today. Now, sometimes this can mean the interviewer hasn't really had the opportunity to look through your resume and wants you to basically tell them your story, or it means they want to sort of have you walk them through their background. Now, this is a great opportunity that you have here, and so it's something I want you to practice. It's taking some of the credibility examples that you pulled together, ideally the ones that highlight best how much a match you are for this position, as well as the sort of chronological experience of work and professional exposure that you've had that's related. Now, what you do want to do is practice sort of a high-level walkthrough of your background, inserting those experiences that really make you shine for that job as you talk it through. Write it down if you have to, but talk it through at least 3 or 4 times. You don't want to sound like it's a rehearsed speech, but you want to feel easy about being able to talk about what's on your background. What you don't want to do is just say, well, when I went to college, I did this, this, and this, and list off every single detail, whether it's relevant to this job or not, of the experiences that you've had. That just turns into a very boring discussion, and it doesn't really give you that opportunity to sell yourself. So this is sort of your pitch. It's bringing your credibility and sort of your passion, your challenge, your uniqueness for this position together into one sort of story about yourself and how you tell it. Some interviewers will come to interviews with sort of a list of questions ready to ask you and not really let you get through sort of a longer version. Some interviewers don't really have set questions, they just have a theme or just general questions that they ask everyone. So just make sure that the pitch is something that's, not too long. If you can keep it under a couple of minutes, that's great. But something that is comfortable and can lead to further discussion. Tell me more about that. Oh, that's really interesting. So, make sure the stuff that you highlight is the stuff that you're prepared to talk about. As it stands, though, extra advice from me, if you put something on your resume, be sure that you're ready to talk about it. I can't tell you how many times I've been in interviews with candidates and I've asked them, hey, it looks like you worked on this project 2 years ago. That's really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about it? and they sort of can't really remember. And it's fascinating to me because I'm just sort of like, well, it's on your resume. It's sort of free game for me to talk about. If there are programming languages and skills, verbal spoken languages and skills that you've listed on your resume, you have to be prepared to back them up when you're physically in an interview. So outside of all of this, preparing your pitch and establishing your credibility, I just want to sort of caveat all of that with make sure if it's on your resume, you have to be prepared to talk about it in detail. So, speaking about talking in detail, the meatiest part of a resume is sort of the question and answer period. And oftentimes, like I said, interviewers will show up with a list of questions that they have to ask for you. Sometimes they won't. They'll at least start off with that opening, tell me about your background. And from there, sort of launch off into some questions that they specifically want to ask about how you're a fit for this role. Great. However, you need to be prepared with questions as well. Oftentimes I've sat in debriefs where we're talking about a candidate at the end of an interview day, and interviewers will come back with feedback. Great guy, answered all my questions really well, but didn't really have any questions for me, so not really sure how interested or how passionate or how motivated he or she may be. So it can leave a negative impression when you don't have questions, even though you're eager and doing all the other stuff correctly. So just make sure that you come in with a list of questions. I'm going to give you some must-ask questions because these are really things that you really have to know before you walk out the door. My suggestion is that you bring a notepad with your list of questions and you ask everybody the same master list of questions that I'm going to give you, and then pepper in the other questions that we'll talk about in a moment throughout the conversation on what feels natural. Completely okay to ask people the same questions throughout the day. It will give you a much better view into that company if you ask people from different departments or different teams the same question. It'll build more of a 3D model than a flat version of what it's like to work there for you. And these questions are essential for really demonstrating that you're interested in this job and the history behind it and where they want it to go. So the first one is, why is this job open now? Is it a newly created position, or was somebody let go? Did somebody leave? Were they very happy with the person that was there? Were they not? You don't want to dig too much into personal information about a previous employee, but you do want to understand the context of the room that you're potentially walking into. So feel free to ask why this job is open right now. I also like to ask each interviewer whether they're someone senior to the position, parallel to the position, work in a different department, collaborate, junior to the position, wherever they are. I like to ask them how they would define the success of this job they're trying to fill. This can lead you to follow-on questions like, what are some of the pain points and what's some of the most important parts of this job being successful to you. Understand what stake that interviewer has in the game, and it'll help you really set the tone for how you frame, how you answer questions going forward. If this person is telling you that their primary interest in having this job filled by somebody competent is because there are budget forecasts that get messed up if this person doesn't do their job effectively, well, then you can proceed for the rest of the conversation to highlight just how effective your detail orientation, analysis, and timeliness skills are, so you can satisfy what that person is looking for. So what you're asking questions to demonstrate your passion and interest. What you're getting back is information on your audience in that interview and what they care about, so you know how to engage with them at their level using their language. Also, don't ever forget to ask what are the next steps in the interview process. Even if you're not speaking to the recruiter, everybody has a different view. They have their own personal experience that they can share with you, and it'll give you a good idea for when you should follow up and when you can expect to hear. Now, the other questions I'd like you to work in there as well. And again, you don't have to ask these questions that we're going to talk about now to everyone, but pepper them in based on the relevancy to your audience. But I want you to think about the things that are important to you to be successful at the job. Now, let's go back to the example we talked about a little while ago. Let's say you're looking for a job because you really are having a tough experience with the boss that you're currently working with. Well, why is that? Is that person not supportive of you? Are they not developing you? Are they not giving you advancement opportunities? Is the job just not the type of industry or skill or prestige that you're looking to get? And if you think through not the frustration about why you're looking for a job right now, but all of the joy and the environment that you thrive in, if you had to sort of draw your perfect work environment, draw your perfect, I can't find a better word than draw, imagine, there we go, your perfect boss, blue sky it to the ultimate, and think through, what do I really need to be successful? You can build a list of questions. You know, if you need to be in an environment where you have a lot of day-to-day direction from a manager, then you can ask that individual, can you tell me about your relationship with your manager and how involved they are in your day-to-day projects? And that'll give you some insight into how that manager or how that team operates. If you need to be in an environment that offers you an opportunity for promotion and advancement every 16 to 18 months, then ask, when was the last time you got promoted, and what's the sort of ramp time to sort of being able to have new opportunities come your way? You don't want to position it as you're looking for the next job, but you can ask that question in the context of, will I be promoted? Will I get a bonus? And those sorts of things. So put together a list of questions, some that you ask everyone, some that you ask just some people, and it's okay to repeat the questions to as many people as you want to. And find out for yourself. You know, the interview is not just about you being interviewed. It's about you interviewing the company as well, and identifying for yourself, you know, is this somewhere I want to go and spend 6 to 10 hours a day? Maybe, maybe not. And if it's not, then it's probably not somewhere where you're going to do your best and shine. So maybe at the end of that interview, you may get an offer, but decide that it's not the right sort of opportunity for you. I'm going to give you one question before I move off of this, because I think it's really important. I was talking to a friend of mine who is also a recruiter, and her son was graduating college that year, and he was looking for a new job to start off his career, and he had an accounting background, so he was visiting sort of the top accounting firms like Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and ones like those. He was at some networking event where the partner of one of the groups was up and talking to a small group of potential candidates and answering questions. And the son of my friend stood up and asked this question: how many weddings have you been to from people in the department from the last year? Understanding that this man manages a department of hundreds of people and is responsible for quite a large amount of business. He was sort of confused, and he responded with a number I don't know. But the reason that that gentleman had asked that question to the partner was he wanted to know if A, the people who worked underneath him liked him enough to invite them to their weddings, and B, if they had enough of a social life, because it was a fairly young group that he was managing, if they had enough of a social life to go out, find someone to actually get married to and have a life. So I think it was an absolutely brilliant question. He didn't explain to the partner why he asked it. I'm not, again, sure which company it was or what response the partner gave, but in the end, he did go end up working somewhere else. But, you know, you can ask questions like this to understand sort of what the environment is that you're going into, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a very direct question. Sometimes some of the best questions are a little bit more subtle. Okay, so step number 5 and final step. Once you go in for the interview, which I didn't add as a step because, come on, it's a given, it's interview essentials. Actually showing up for the interview is kind of key to getting the job. So step number 5 is follow up. Take notes throughout the day. This is the only time I'm going to tell you it's okay to take notes. I don't tell you it's okay at networking events and everywhere else that you go, but at an interview, it's expected. Show up with a notepad and paper. Do not show up with a laptop. I know it's super easy for you to type on a laptop. Do you see me rolling my eyes while I say that? It's just, it's evasive. You've put up a wall in between yourself and another person. If you've got a notepad, iPad, Surface, whatever it may be, that's less disruptive by all means, but honking up a laptop screen and typing away while somebody's talking is, It's beyond distracting. It's just rude, so don't do it. But take notes through the interview. Reference conversations when you send notes to people to follow up and thank them for their time. But reference the conversation. Maybe if you had a really interesting conversation about a shared topic because you did your homework before you got there and you maybe had some questions about that, then you can send them a link to an article or a website that they might find interesting based on that shared topic. Remember, a thank you note will never hurt you, but it can help you. I was just on one of my Facebook groups this morning for recruiters, and folks were talking about the thank you note. For me personally, as a recruiter, I think, it's a nice gesture, thanks, it's awfully polite, but it's never going to make me say yes to a candidate. It's also never going to make me say no to a candidate, whether they send one or not. But there were a few recruiters on there who were very stern about, if I've taken the time to really develop a relationship with this person, brought them in, had them meet folks, and they don't send a thank you note, it's telling. The one thing I will tell you that I genuinely and wholly believe is that recruiting is a lot like dating. So this makes the fact that I'm 45 and single probably not the best source of advice when it comes to dating, but when it comes to recruiting, I'm actually quite good at this stuff. But what that means essentially is at the front end, when you're first meeting each other through the application, through the interview process, everyone is expected to sort of be on their best behavior, the best version of themselves, not somebody else altogether, in La La Land. But, if the best version of yourself can't show up on time for an interview or send a thank you note afterwards for taking time out of your day to spend time with me and give me this opportunity, then, as relationships progress, things tend to deteriorate. Hygiene standards diminish. You don't call as frequently as you used to. And, the level of connection changes, and then you get married and the whole thing falls off a cliff. So what I'm saying is during that dating period, just be the best, most thoughtful version of yourself, and you'll win every time. So before I let you go, I'm just going to run through the 5 steps again. Establish your credentials, build your case, and using those, prepare your pitch. Get good questions going. Question everything that's important to you. Make sure you have your master questions that you ask everyone, but also make sure you have some really relevant questions that are going to give you the information you need to decide whether this is the right employer for you. And be thoughtful. Follow up. And that's it. That is my spiel for today. I think I'm not over time. I'm under time. Yay, me. All right. So thank you very much for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat even afterwards. I will check the videos later. And have a wonderful day. Good luck on any upcoming interviews. I hope you get them. Be you, show up, be awesome, and you'll do just fine. Thanks and have a great day. Bye.